Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel. So, should you buy a Toyota Land Cruiser? Are they really as good as people say they are? Well, in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Land Cruisers. I'll share with you the service side of Land Cruisers and how good or not good are they really, from my experience working at a Toyota dealership as a Toyota Master Diagnostic Technician. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. If you are a returning subscriber, well, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So, the Toyota Land Cruiser. Folks, the Toyota Land Cruiser has a spot on its own. It's almost like it's not just a Toyota, it's just a brand of its own. And as we make this video, unfortunately, the sales of the Land Cruiser are stopping in the United States due to low sales, due to many other factors. But nonetheless, the Land Cruiser remains an icon in the Toyota lineup. And it is a special car that really none of the other models come close to it. So, we have a 200 series Land Cruiser behind me, 2015. Let's take a look at it and let's see what makes the Land Cruiser so special, especially since some of the components that it has seems to be shared with other models. But are they exactly the same or are they different? Let's take a look at that. So if we look at the V8 engine in the 200 series Land Cruiser, it's a 5.7 liter 3UR FE engine. Now if you look at that engine, it's actually shared with other models across the Toyota lineup, like the Sequoia, the Tundra, and then if you look at the Lexus side, it is of course shared with the LX, and different variants of this engine, different sizes, are also shared with other models. But are they really the same? Is this engine exactly the same as the one in the Sequoia and the Tundra? Well, in order to answer that, let me first show you this engine the way I see it, not the way any owner would open the hood. Just like this. Just like this. So, the thing about this engine is, the way I can tell you that this engine is completely different, even though it is the same engine, same components, same everything, but the build of this engine is completely different, is the way the common problems show themselves. Now, if we go look at a Tundra or a Sequoia, something that is notorious with this engine, actually a few things. One of them is cam tower oil leaks. Now, the cam tower is the part of the cylinder head that sits on top that houses the camshafts. They're notorious to leak, but all the Land Cruisers that I've seen, and trust me, there are many, I've never seen one with a leaking cam tower. And then you look at the small details of the fit and finish of the engine bay, the sealer application, everything around. It is just not the same level. And that doesn't mean that the other ones are inferior, but it means that this one takes things to the next level. Other common issues with this engine: water pump leaks. Of all the 200 series Land Cruisers that I have seen, I actually remember the exact number of how many water pumps I have done. One. Singular. I have seen so many 200 series with the water pump lasting well over 200,000 miles. That is not the same thing on the Tundra and Sequoia, as they are notorious for water pump leaks. Another thing about this engine that is completely different than the Tundra and Sequoia, and it potentially could have to do with the build quality or perhaps different parts inside, that is relatively clear, or something that Toyota would come out and say it. But the Tundra and Sequoia engine is significantly louder than this engine. They're notorious to have ticking sounds and issues with the tensioners and all that. Not for the Land Cruiser, and you'll see this Land Cruiser go 200,000-300,000 miles, and the engine is extremely quiet. Well, if you look at it from the outside, it is the same engine, but it's actually not made the same. It is, every part on the Land Cruiser is made specifically for the Land Cruiser. Shape-wise, model-wise, design-wise might be similar to other models, but there's nothing about the Land Cruiser that is shared with other random models. It is specifically made for the Land Cruiser, and that's what makes these things incredibly reliable. And another thing is the radiator. I mean, this is the first thing you see when you open the hood. The radiator is different. It is not shared with a Sequoia, a Tundra. It is a one-off, and it's designed only for the Land Cruiser. And it's such a large radiator. Everything in the Land Cruiser is overbuilt. If you really start focusing on the small details, everything is extremely overbuilt, starting with this radiator. Then we go into the brake system. The accumulator is, for lack of a better word, it's enormous compared to other models. The whole ABS unit, yeah, you look at it, it might look similar, familiar, or just it looks about the same as the other models, you know, 4Runner that shares a similar system, but it's not. That is overbuilt too. It has an enormous accumulator. The whole unit is bigger, and it's different. It's a one-off unit. And it is that way of building the Land Cruiser, that purpose-built things. Everything is extremely overbuilt on the Land Cruiser. Now, the one thing that is actually special about the Land Cruiser is, at least in my opinion, and many owners will agree, look, most Toyotas are built to be reliable, efficient, dependable. They're really well made. Some of the newer ones are becoming more, you know, nicer to drive, nicer, but that was never really the top priority. And typically, people criticize Toyotas for being without a soul, bland, boring. Those are the words you hear sometimes. But nobody can really say that about the Land Cruiser, because the Land Cruiser, and owners, feel free to jump on the comments and join me in saying this, the Land Cruiser has a soul. And that soul comes from just the way it's built. Everything feels overbuilt. Everything feels like Toyota went to their normal testing with their normal, very reliable and dependable models, and they said, okay, this component, we made it, it's really good. Now let's make it 5 times more dependable for regular Toyotas. And for the Land Cruiser, they just said, let's make it 25 times more dependable. Because everything I've taken apart on any Land Cruiser has been different than other models. We go back to the 100 series, for example. The engine, there were things, when we do just a typical maintenance on a timing belt, there were certain bolts that were different. You look at the bolt, it is a different shape than if you were doing the same thing on a Tundra or a Sequoia. Not to say that the Sequoia, again, I want to make sure you don't get the wrong impression here. Sequoia and Tundra are great cars, but this is a next level up. And if you've been watching my channel for a long time, I praise the 4Runner, and I say it is one of the most reliable trucks Toyota makes. But this is the only time I will publicly say this on my channel. The Land Cruiser is a whole new level of dependability, of build quality. What makes the Land Cruiser what it is, and what makes it, honestly, better than the 4Runner, is the absolute uniqueness of every component that is used in this truck. And you know what? Some people will look at this overall design, like we're looking under the hood right now. Well, if I take a picture here, and I take a similar picture in a Tundra, most people will not really notice significant differences because the fuse block is in the same place, the air filter housing looks similar, the layout of everything looks similar. But if you really start looking closer and get past the initial impression, everything feels different. Yes, the fuse block is a similar design, but you touch it and you feel it. The plastic feels better. It is that insane. And then you go look at this intake right here. The plastic is much harder and it's a lot more durable. It's just not the same. This accordion right here feels, everything is just overbuilt. It is not, this is not a parts collection. This is not a, let's bring a Tundra, nobody will notice. We'll slap that big body on it and, put a few more expensive leather seats and call it a day. This is not it. Because when they made the Lexus version of the Land Cruiser, I mean, I can imagine they really had a hard time. Okay, how do we make something that is so good even better? Is that even possible? That's why the Lexus LX, price-wise, it didn't really jump much from the Land Cruiser, because how do you make something this good even better to make a luxury version out of that? It's not possible. And then we go inside the Land Cruisers, and you know what? From the service side, and I'll just be flat honest with you, this is not an advertisement for Toyota or Land Cruisers. They are a pain to work on, and I'll tell you why. If you've ever had the displeasure of removing a seat out of a Land Cruiser, your back will remember it. Everything here is also overbuilt, and I've been inside so many Toyotas. Now, I'm not just saying this reading it off a paper. I've been inside so many Toyotas, taking dashes apart, taking interiors apart, and all that. And the Land Cruiser is usually the worst ones because everything is different. Everything is built differently, put together differently, and have a tendency of having any panel that typically will have one bolt, it'll have four. And every panel that typically have three clips, it'll have six. And you end up just taking a sea of bolts and clips, and everything is more difficult on a Land Cruiser. And the one thing I noticed, just being around them and seeing the different generations, the interior build quality is significantly higher than other models. Ever since Lexus came out, your Toyota's interior quality has been good, but not luxury level. Because, otherwise, what's the point of buying a Lexus? The best way to describe the interiors of most, if not possibly all, modern Land Cruisers, the materials they've used are Lexus quality. That's why when you go list it in an Lexus LX, which, let's just say it, the Lexus LX is basically a Land Cruiser with maybe a different tie, maybe a different jacket, I don't know, but not really much different. The leather, for example, on the seats, it is actually very soft leather. Compared to other models, even when you go into the Avalon, you go into some of the nicer Toyota models, it's not this soft leather. It's like almost the leather in the Land Cruiser is exclusive to it. And then you look at the headliner. If you look at other Toyota models, they're starting to go into more of a industrial looking headliner. I don't know what would be the better word than that. They're just rough and they all have the same texture and everything. But you get in the Land Cruiser, the materials are, again, Lexus level or possibly even more, because some of the Lexuses now are dropping that. But you look at the material, everything is very soft, very nice, because again, everything is overbuilt. Even this, I mean, the typical Land Cruiser owner will go and off-road with this truck and everything. Some people will see it as a luxury car that's very dependable and very nice. Depends what your ownership type is. But even things like this, they did not miss. I mean, most people look at the headliner, yeah, but once you've been driving for a while, they're not going to really look at the headliner. But even that is overbuilt. And by the way, one more thing I also learned about Land Cruiser owners, they're very particular about their trucks and they love them. See what I'm talking about? So, if things are so great with the Land Cruiser, why are they stopping production? What's going on? Why is this Land Cruiser not selling like hotcakes? Well, let's talk about the failures of the Land Cruiser. And Land Cruiser owners, I know it's a very strong community. Don't be offended, because this is the truth. I hope you know it inside of you, but nobody wants to admit it. So let's talk about it. The truth of the matter is, the Land Cruiser didn't do well in the US only, perhaps in Canada too, but in other parts of the world, they are a nameplate. They are the name. They are the car, the truck to get. And the reason for that is Toyota seems to have wanted to present the Land Cruiser in the US market as a luxury SUV. And that was a mistake. Because at this price point, you already took out so many people from buying one. And then they go on the internet, they see that the world has so many versions of the Land Cruiser. Not just the 100 series, 200 series. They have so many other models still being sold today that some of them are bare bones. They have manual windows, they have diesel engines, they have different engine options, they have steel wheels, you can customize them almost infinitely. But in the US, for the most part, we really got one version of each. And it happened to be the most expensive one. That is the first problem. The second problem is the identity crisis that comes because of that. See, you look at the Land Cruiser, you look at the 2021 model, for example. Well, is it an off-roader or is it a luxury car? Which one is it? Because many people will buy it as an off-road vehicle, but then when they see the soft leather, the really nice materials inside, and that first car payment hits and they pay it and they take a deep breath, they're not going to take it off-roading and get it all muddy and covered in mud because they see it now as a near exotic. I mean, it's too expensive. And then the other problem with it is when you demand such a high price, and people usually will go shopping around, and people that can afford a car at this high price, they usually don't care too much about its care, about its maintenance and care. So then the other identity crisis comes. Okay, I'm paying this small fortune, and let's compare it, and I'm not comparing this because the car that I'm going to talk about right now is a pile of junk, in my opinion. A Range Rover, for example, they're about the same price, they're about the same size. That's also another capable car off-road that has a little identity crisis. But let's be honest with ourselves. The Land Cruiser looks are very understated. And for the most part, people like that. But the majority of people, they want a nice looking car for that price point. And the Land Cruiser is very understated, purposely. But when you mix the whole thing together, the whole package, it just doesn't make sense. Because is it an off-roader? Is it a luxury car? Or can I just make it a work truck? Yes, some people will jump up from their seat, but if you want to look around the world, they're actually used as work trucks. Believe it or not, because you can get a stripped down version, doesn't even have carpet on the floor, with a manual transmission, manual everything, and use it as a work truck because they're actually really good. They're purpose built for that. We don't have that in the US, and people who can afford to buy these new, they just don't see the point of them anymore. And the only reason people kept buying them, certain clientele kept buying them, is people who did not want a car that brought attention. Something that was a very nice place to be that didn't bring attention. But those are not the majority. They're actually very minority. And that's why the sales kind of kept going down, until it got to a point where Toyota, the business company, which they are brilliant at that, they're like, we're going to stop production because this cost us a lot of money to make a new model of the Land Cruiser. Because again, remember, they have to overbuild everything that they already have to make a new model. So they just like, we're done. We're going to stop making it. Because people were not buying it. They had to make a business decision. And Toyota is really good about making good business decisions. So let's talk about some common problems. Now that pretty soon you won't be able to buy a new one in the US, let's talk about some common problems with these. Now, to be honest with you folks, as far as time goes back until we get into the 25-year-old plus, of course, at that point they would be older and they would need different things. But as far as common problems, they don't really have many common problems. And let's focus mainly on the 100 series and the 200 series Land Cruiser. They don't have common problems. Some problems will pop up here and there, but nothing chronic or repetitive. There's only one problem that could turn this overbuilt behemoth behind me into a pile of junk. That's, for lack of a better term, that is how it would turn. Folks, I love you all, and because I do, I want you to hear me very closely. Please, when you go shopping for a Land Cruiser, before you look under the hood, before you check the interior out, before you look at the service history, before all that, you're going to lift the truck and look for rust. Because if you buy a very rusty Land Cruiser, especially the 100 series Land Cruisers, you're going to buy a pile of junk. It's just going to start falling apart in a way that is unbelievable. Now, admittedly, I will say this, the 200 series seems to be a lot better, but again, they are newer, so it's only a matter of time. Buying a rusty Land Cruiser is a big mistake. Because when you need to start replacing parts, and this is going to be the surprise for some owners, parts are extremely expensive, unbelievably expensive. I will not forget the time that we had to replace a seat on one of these, a complete, absolutely complete seat with the leather, with everything. It was $8,000. Yeah, let's swallow that pill for a second. Now that seat will never break. It'll last forever, but if you push it and it breaks, it's going to cost a small fortune. And that's another thing with the Land Cruiser. Parts are not cheap. They last a very long time, but when they do go, it costs a pretty penny because everything is overbuilt. Remember that you're not sharing parts with other models. Everything is purpose-built for the Land Cruiser, and it's going to cost a lot more than usual. So please avoid buying rusty ones. So let's talk about this is going to be my personal opinion on which is the best generation to buy in the Land Cruiser. So if you're looking for more old schoolness, if you would, go with the 100 series. If you want a model that has a little bit more amenities, and I'm not saying they're the latest and the greatest, they're still old school, but a little bit more, go with the 200 series. As far as reliability, they're all reliable. They're all very reliable if you buy the right one. But here's where I would break, if you're shopping for one and you're watching this video, here's where I would break them down, which one would you lean towards. The 100 series overall maintenance costs will be higher than the 200 series. Not because they are older, but because they just require more maintenance. And some of their simple maintenance items turn to be a lot more expensive than the 200 series. For example, the 100 series has a timing belt. This doesn't. The 100 series, every time you replace the front rotors, now you're taking the bearings out and repacking them, and this brings the labor costs up. And speaking of the bearings constantly need repacking, and many people don't do this, and most of the bearings are loose on the street, but they still are fine. But if you're fixing your car right, you're going to have to do something about the bearings. While the 200 series has a sealed bearing. It's going to go out at some point, but being overbuilt, at some point is going to be very far away. So your overall maintenance costs on the 200 series will be a lot less than your 100 series. But where the 100 series really exceeds the 200 series is in the overall ride quality. In my opinion, this is my personal opinion, I think the 200 series has a little bit of that nosedive when you hit the brakes. That is just the way they are. A little bit more on the softer side. The 100 series behaves better. The other common concern about the 200 series, and this actually is from owners that I meet and talk to, the 200 series looks like a giant truck. It just looks like a fat truck. That's the description that I hear. Another description, actually, the owner of this 200 series behind me told me, it looks like a pregnant Highlander. That's the word he used to describe his own car. But the 100 series Land Cruiser could potentially look better. It just doesn't look inflated and large. That's the other thing. These are all superficial things, and it comes down to your taste. But make no mistake, as far as reliability, as long as it's not a rusty truck, buy a 100 series, buy a 200 series, you're not going to have an issue. And the best part is, now that they're going out of production, the values are only going to go up. Just make sure you don't jump on the rusty ones, because you're really going to be sorry if you do. I hope you liked this video. I hope it was informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.